Hello, everybody. This is Maurice Kande from the City of David. And today I would like to share a very important topic that will be relevant, especially in these end times. I would like to speak about growth, spiritual growth, and how we can actually get into a stage where we actually grow spiritually. In the same way that the human body needs to grow from moving away from a baby form to an adult form, our spiritual life also needs to grow as well. And simply because a person has been born again for many years, it doesn't necessarily mean that the person is a spiritual adult. There are many cases where a person could be born again years and years and years ago, and yet they will still live and act and be and speak like a spiritual baby. So, in order to grow physically, the human body needs food, vitamin, proteins, and certain conditions as well. And obviously, the human body at a certain point will stop growing, but the human body still needs to be reinforced with strength. If a human body does not eat food for many, many days, eventually what's going to happen is that that body would become weak and weaker against disease, sickness, against all form of dangers and threats, biological threats that could be existing around it. Now, having done that analogy, I would like to also speak about our spiritual lives. And it really matters, especially in this day and age where we are now living in the end times, a period or a season that is characterized by very, very bad events such as wars, rumors of wars, uh, hunger, disease, and all sorts of bad events. And it is very, very important and advantageous for all of us to move into a stage of growth so that we can be able to handle and face all the attacks that the enemy has planned and is preparing to actually send towards the church. Now, here's a very good question. So, how can somebody um, enhance spiritual growth in their own lives? I will follow the example of Jesus. Why am I following the example of Jesus? Because he is the one that we're supposed to imitate. Just like the Apostle Paul said, imitate me in the same way that I imitate Christ. And if, as a Christian, we have all sort of examples other than Jesus, then there's definitely something that we should question ourselves about. Now, it is possible that many people will be using many techniques or various examples or various tools to help into spiritual growth. However, in this message, I would like to simply use what Jesus basically said in John 4. And I am going to read very quickly this short passage. John chapter 4, from verse tw- from verse 31 to verse 34. So, just to give a bit of a context, the disciples are meeting Jesus, and Jesus just came from speaking with a woman who had a long list of relationships, and that woman was convinced that he's the Messiah. So she goes on somewhere in other places, sorry, she goes on other places and go and share the good news saying that she has met the Messiah. Now, after that encounter, Jesus is going to be joined by his disciples, and the disciples are going to urge him to eat something. Now, I'm going to read that part from verse 31. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, Rabbi, eat something. But he, Jesus, said to them, I have food to eat that you know nothing about. Verse 33. Then his disciples said to each other, could someone have brought him food? Verse 34. My food, said Jesus, is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Very interesting. So in the same way that I was saying a few seconds ago, I was just saying that we should follow the example of Jesus and imitate him. Because if we use another example, it literally means that our Christianity is as so many questionable things. So he says in that passage that his food, his food is to do the will of him who sent him and to finish his work. So here there are two things. First, to do the will of God, and the second thing is to finish his work. It's not just enough to start something, we should also finish what we've been told to do. We should finish what God has told us to do. So the food that Jesus was actually eating had a combination of two things: do and finish. It's very important that we discuss, especially the finishing part, because it all gets very tempting and easy to start something, especially when we get excited and our emotions. God gives us something to do, we get started, and then as time goes on, through circumstances and also through all sort of events and life circumstances, we actually tend to take a pause and put a pause on what we're doing, and then after that we give up. And these are some of the things that can also contribute to the to stopping the growth of a Christian. As we eat that food, which consists in doing the will of God and into finishing what He's asking us to do, we actually reinforce in our spiritual lives and we grow spiritually as well. So, doing and finishing what God tells us to do are representing some heavy food, some heavy spiritual food that can also contribute to the maturity of a Christian. You know, the more, excuse me, the more a Christian is actually doing the will of God and also finishing, the more they grow, the more they reinforce the spiritual body. And this is basically one lesson that we can learn. I want to grow by doing and finishing His work, and I also want you to grow. God bless you, and I'll see you next time.